Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kastuba. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host Raghunath and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kastuba Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to Q&A Day. Q&A Day is the day we field all these questions from our listeners. Sometimes they stack up, we've got cases of them, but sometimes they go right here, get right in. And so Mara keeps accurate track of these, keeps them in a particular order, picks out the goodies, burns a few, and then gives us what she wants us to read. And so if you want to write in, if you got a question, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com, and we can answer your question. Any other announcements, my friends?
Maraji?
Yeah, we have a Bhakti Recovery Group meeting today at 9:30 a.m. And there's no show tomorrow. Is that right?
That's right. There's no show tomorrow.
No show tomorrow, but Sweet Baby Krishna tomorrow.
Oh, what time?
Tomorrow night at 7:30?
Tomorrow night, 7:30.
Okay.
We had a sweet one last night. We're reading from the Garga Samhita. We're all feeling blissful.
Very good.
I had Bobby there. We did it, three of us, live. Bobby, Mara, and Bunky. I got to quiz them all live. We're having quiz competitions, transcendental quiz competitions.
Nice.
Yeah. So Sweet Baby Krishna Sunday, but no show tomorrow.
That's right. And always, as we're always repeating here, now's the time to sign up for the Kali Columbia retreat.
Yep.
The spots are filling.
Spots is filling. BhaktiRetreats108@gmail.com.
Okay.
All right. So let's dive into our cues.
Cues, yes. The first one we were both going to take, right? Is that right?
Sure. You want to read it? I want you to be the reader today.
You want me to be the reader? All right.
Is that okay?
You want me to read my own questions?
Maybe. We'll see.
Okay, let's see how you feel. You don't have your glasses?
There you're somewhere.
Okay, this is actually a very sobering question. This is one we've been holding on to this question for a couple of weeks because we've been trying to get Dunya on the show because
we want to get a trained professional in case instead of like two punk rock barely made it through high school.
Yeah.
Let's give you our mature opinion.
Yeah, because
serious subjects.
It's a very serious question. It's a difficult question. It's a question that involves, psychology and psychotherapy and things like that. So honestly,
case studies.
Yeah, So
I was in a punk band.
Yeah.
Why are they asking me these questions?
But it's at the same time, it's a very sincere question. So
yeah,
and they gave it to us. So we really wanted. This is a question. It's coming from Terry in London. And we really wanted to bring Dunya on for this, but she couldn't make it last week. Somehow she and I miscommunicated because I thought she said I could do it this week. But then when I got in touch, she said she's not available till like mid-November. So I said, okay, we don't want to keep putting this question off. We'll take it on and we'll do our best with it. And you know what I should have done? I should have asked her what her thoughts were. Why didn't I do that?
Just ask her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you've got any really deep philosophical questions that talk about emotions and maybe pain, you might want to save those for the real person. She'll be back months from now. If you got the real dum-dums out there, you write to me, Kastuba. We got you covered. Okay.
So here it is. And again, it's a serious question. So let's hear it now. This comes from Terry, who lives in London. And
Okay.
Terry writes, "Thank you so much for the community you've created, the daily service, and the conduits for the wisdom in the pages. I'm not writing to you for free counseling advice on my problems, but would like your help on offering the Bhagavatam perspective on how to deal with my situation." Okay. "So I come to you with a humble heart and hope you're able to offer some ancient wisdom that might be applicable." Well, that helps frame it a bit for us, right? Okay. "My father suffers from schizophrenia. As a child, my sister and I witnessed violent and traumatic behavior as a result of his illness. But from the ages of 8 and 6, he was out of our lives for a few years. He had been on medication and had years with no episodes. From age 15, he came back into my life and at a distance, but we tried to manage a relationship. Over the years, the relationship became strained due to strange things he'd say or do, and after a particularly hurtful and difficult encounter 6 years ago, we became estranged and have only had brief conversations which have usually ended in him saying more hurtful things."
Ugh.
Okay, so it's a very difficult relationship. And,
Sure.
already I think Terry's kind of built into it a certain sympathy. Like, in other words, this person has a mental illness,
Sure.
which is, causing or triggering, or however you want to phrase it, this behavior. At the same time, the behavior is real and it's causing a lot of pain in their life. So Terry continues, "In short, I decided I was not strong enough to deal with him or his illness, and selfishly concluded that he was no father to me in any way imaginable, and I would no longer be a good son to him. He recently relapsed and has been institutionalized. The doctors have contacted me as his next closest relative to make decisions with regarding his treatment and location. Truthfully, I want him well, but out of my life. So here's the question. What is the right thing to do? Krishna tells Arjuna to do his duty when he doesn't want to. Should I turn my back on a man in need who failed to meet societal and personal expectations as a parent? Or should I find something inside of me and try to help him by visiting and rekindling a relationship? Lastly, if or when you visit London, this is a little London. I am here for you for anything you need for help with.
Take
from
down
a
the
driver
number.
to a bag boy, please do not hesitate to ask. That's very kind of you, Terry. He writes, "Thank you again for everything you do, and prayers to Raghu for a speedy recovery." Raghu's looking pretty good now.
Thank you. Feeling strong.
Yeah, that was
Thank
a couple
you.
weeks old.
It's a great question. I mean, it's a deep question. It's a yeah. You want to take a shot first?
Well, I'm just sharing thoughts here because, again, I don't feel qualified to give a professional type of opinion on this. I don't have case studies. I'm not so familiar about these dynamics and the wisest, the patterns and the wisest way to deal with them. So I'm just sharing thoughts. Now, my first thought when I read this letter, it brings me back to a letter that we took back when we were in Italy, where there was a question that it was also a father-son relationship. And that, a very strange relationship where the son was saying, should I go back and try to continue to work things out with this person, or should I just let it go?
Right.
And we had Ganesham, who's another kind of profession, because that was an end of life kind of thing. The end of the father's end of life was approaching, and Ganesham, who works in that field of end of life care and so on, he, I don't know if surprised me, but he came strong on one side, which was go for it. Do what you need to do to give it one more try to make this work. Otherwise, you may regret it for the rest of your life. And he had stories about how people were so glad that they did it, that he had witnessed, right? Sure. So he saw it as he very much encouraged the person to try to rekindle that relationship at the very end. This is also, it's kind of, it appears to be, getting towards the end. I don't know if it's end of life exactly, but it seems like it's kind of getting that way. there's another ingredient in this. There's another part of this equation, which is that this person has a mental illness, and maybe that's something harder to get over, right? It's not kind of like just two people sitting down and
Right.
being in a new place, and being able to say I'm sorry or whatever it is that they need to say. It may be that you can't really penetrate this, and my guess is that a professional may be able to provide some kind of boundaries where you could approach this, and that's where I feel lacking. In other words, it feels to me like an attempt could or should be made, but with certain caution, with certain boundaries that one would approach it. Like, this person needs someone to step up and help make decisions for what's in his best interest. I don't know how involved you need to get with him in order to help make those decisions.
Or do you just check one box?
Is it just okay? Put him in this institution, or
Put him on this.
give him
Here's
this
how many-
kind of care. Yeah, I'll sign off for that. Can you do that and not even get involved with him? I don't know. How involved you need to get with him to help him, I don't know. But I guess I would encourage, I like the fact that he goes to Arjuna. I like the fact that he's willing to, he's cautious not to act selfishly, but to try to be selfless, right? He even defined his own kind of stepping away as selfish in the past. I'm not sure if of course, I'm not at all familiar with the circumstance. I'm not sure if it rightfully would be called selfish or just wise, or self-preserving,
Right.
But it's with what limited knowledge I have, and with what knowledge I have, both in terms of these kind of issues as well as knowledge of in terms of your actual situation. I suppose I would encourage you to try. But if you feel that this connection or reconnection is having some kind of very detrimental influence on your life, then you may just have to let go. I don't know if I can say much more than that. What do you think, Rowan?
I was going to say, it is very simple, especially nowadays. People do it all the time. Like, I need my boundaries. And it can be very simple to, in the name of protecting yourself, not do the harder work of actually working through an issue where most likely you're going to have to surrender part of your ego to be empathetic to another person's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's interesting because I'm having a lot of these conversations with people, students that are 1, police officers, 2, emergency response people, 3, nurses. I'm randomly just talking to people, and they just say, like, I'm in this giving industry, or I'm in this industry where emergency response, where you see someone in incredible trauma or gunshot, and it's like one after another. That's what makes it an emergency.
That's your day. That's your day.
That's your normal.
Yeah.
Disaster and emergencies are your normal.
Right.
And so after being seen all these traumatic things, it's like, how do you get to a point of helping people at a certain point? It's so it breaks you down, like, psychologically.
In other words, then self-preservation becomes an issue. I can't help others unless I somehow help myself.
Right. So there's got to be a scale between what am I just not knowing to do because I don't want to get lazy, because I'm a little lazy. This person gave birth to me. We just read this whole thing in the Krishna book, Krishna telling the responsibilities. You could never repay the debt to a parent because a parent gave you your very body. I don't know if that's, if you could take that as Shastra or as written in stone for what we're talking about now, but we do have a debt to our parent in one sense. But if it takes you so far over the edge of your own mental health, then you're not going to do anybody any good.
Right.
I basically said the same thing Kastuba did, but in a fuddled way.
But not at all. But another thought that comes to my mind, just another element in the conversation, is something we've talked about in some past shows, I remember. But, like, for instance, take a person that has autism. And again, I have very little knowledge of these subjects, but from things that I've read, there's certain things that I've read that I found very interesting. Like, for instance, with autistic people, like there are certain people that have the patience and the know-how to to actually find that undamaged soul underneath the damaged body or mind. And the concept that there is an undamaged person underneath the mind that actually can recognize, I'm moving through this world. And you see, this is where something like this may be very different. Like a person with schizophrenia may be like in a more diluted state of mind, where like a person with autism may be like, hi, I'm normal under here, but I can't communicate to you well. And so you're thinking that I'm not normal underneath, but actually I am. And someone being able to really go, but in one sense that is the case here. Whether it might be more difficult to deal with a person with this particular condition or not, I don't know. I don't have experience, but I like the idea of, from a Bhagavatam perspective, trying to reach that person underneath, you know. And maybe with the spiritual Bhagavatam perspective that you have now, maybe that would grant you a certain type of patience or a certain type of tolerance or a certain type of insight to kind of not absorb, but actually the opposite of absorb, like to kind of ward off the initial reactions that you may get from this person and reach them underneath somehow, you know. That maybe even the professionals that he's working with, you know, like the caregivers who we have no idea whether they're saintly, brilliant, insightful people, or they're just like overworked, not so skilled, not so insightful,
Not so
staff members,
compassionate,
you know,
yeah.
not so compassionate staff. You know, we don't know the level of care that this person is getting, but maybe maybe with your Bhagavatam perspective, you would be able to get past the external difficulties that this person may present through their behavior and penetrate deeper past the level of the mind to the level of the soul. Maybe there's a way you can do that. So it might be worth experimenting with, you know, seeing if, you know, putting your foot in the water, putting your toe in the water, and seeing if you can approach this person with a greater level of insight than you were earlier in life. It's a possibility.
Nice way to put it. You know, I mean, let's as children, we sometimes hold resentment to the parents, and maybe from an adult vantage point, we're like, yeah, you know what, I have to let go because now I'm a dad and I realize how hard it is. So yeah, maybe at this vantage point in this person's life, and be turning around. You know, this very tough things get put in front of our face, and we think, well, you know, God, make this thing go away. But God could be answering your prayers right now as well.
Right. I mean, he is in one sense or another, right?
It's like, what are we praying for anyway? I want to be compassionate. I want to be loving. I want to be sensitive. I want to be completely forgiving. This is what we're actually praying for in a regular. Oh, really? Try this little curveball. Try this out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's what we got, Terry. I wish we could give you more.
Yeah.
But let us know, you know, write us a letter and tell us what you think and what you did.
You know, it's cool. We sort of thought the same thing without checking in with each other, which means I feel like we're connected.
Okay. Okay. All right, Robert. Shall we take another question? Shall I read you one, or do you want me to read my own questions? Are you capable of
What
reading?
number? Whose turn? Okay, we're on Rameshwar's, right?
Okay, we could go with that one. Then
Is that
are you going to read it to me?
Sure.
I can-
No.
Okay. Now, Rameshwar is
why
an
don't
old
you do
friend
it?
of mine. You know that? Did you know that?
Rameshwar?
Yeah.
No.
He
Where's he?
and his brother Bhaktavatsala were brahmacharis in Germany. When I lived in Germany for 3 months.
Where?
No, for 6 months. In 1993. Where? Well, I traveled around quite a bit, but then eventually I kind of settled down in Munich.
Oh, at the temple, at the ashram.
Well, there was it wasn't a temple, actually. It was just, there's one dear friend of mine, Priyat Bhanu, who just basically had a little apartment, and a group of, I don't know, 5 or 6 monks lived there in that apartment.
I've
and so
stayed
I stayed
there.
there.
Hey,
And
turn
so-
your house. Maybe this is a sign for somebody today, a transcendental download. Turn your house into an ashram. Invite monks to live. Invite monks to live with you.
Invite monks to live and move them in. So,
Cool.
any case, so we were young, but we were monks together. Rameshwar is an old friend. Him and his brother Bhaktivatsala, they were brothers, and they both were there. But they were from the
I want
punk
a
scene
brother
too,
devotee.
huh?
I want a brother.
You want a brother
devotee.
devotee?
Yeah.
I'll be your brother.
None of my family members are devotees or even practically want anything to do with me having to do with it.
Convert one, Raghu. Convert one. Go for it. And so, any case, they were, they're from Australia, but they kind of got involved in the punk scene in London. So, like the whole kind of thing we were doing in New York, they were doing in London. In any case, little background. But let's hear from Rameshwar's question.
Okay, I can read it if you like.
Oh,
He
Mary's
wrote
gonna
to
read
us
it.
via Discord.
Okay.
He says, okay, serious question. The soul may be described as 1/10,000th of the tip of a hair in size.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, this description is just analogous because it can't really be compared to material dimensions. I understand
True.
also that Jiva souls can manifest a portion of themselves as another personality simultaneously. I think Yamaraj and Vidura is an example of this. And different personalities in the spiritual world can take different manifestations in different eternal leelas, for example, both Krishna's and Lord Chaitanya's. Our concept of time and space doesn't really hold up in the spiritual dimension. So here's the question. I heard a long time ago that our jiva manifestation in this body is just a small portion of our whole selves projected into this earthly realm, that the larger part of us still exists in the spiritual world, perhaps in a dormant state, like sleeping, and we haven't really left the spiritual world at all. This all makes sense, but I don't remember ever seeing this explicitly stated anywhere in Srila Prabhupada's writings. Is this a valid explanation backed up by Shastra or the Acharyas? If so, where? Thanks for everything. Totally loving your show. Wisdom of the sages is the pump to my flat spiritual tires.
Okay. All right. So that's a fascinating question, but because some of the concepts may be some of our listeners may be unfamiliar with some of these concepts, I'll just summarize this question real quick if I can, and kind of maybe clarify some of the things that he mentioned. He was mentioning some very far out ideas that are presented in the ancient yogic texts. Like, for instance, that one person can be manifest in two places at the same time in the spiritual
Fascinating.
realm, right? That you can, it's not, in other words, it's not that you even have to choose. Would I rather be in the spiritual world in this way or in that way? We can be both simultaneously, So he gave a couple of examples of that. But the basic question is this: is it that I'm this little spark of spiritual energy in this body, this jiva, but this isn't the whole me? The whole me is sitting in another realm somewhere, right? Like full size, right? In some kind of sleeping, dormant state. And he's saying he's heard things like this before from other bhakti yogis, apparently. But he's wondering, is there anything that in writing to back that up? And so it's a very interesting question. And he said something that I'm going to bring up now, and then I'm going to get back to at the end of this answer. And he said, where was it? He says, our concept of time and space doesn't really hold up in the spiritual dimension. Okay. And I think that right there, that statement becomes really important because we are talking about things in a realm in which the laws that govern the realm in which we live don't apply. And therefore, the language and the analogies that we use are to help point us in a direction, but maybe are not exact literal parallels. I want to put that out there first, all right? So in other words, there are things happening in a spiritual realm that like we're completely unfamiliar with because we're living in this world that's governed by certain material laws. And to help us understand that spiritual realm, we can use analogies and so on. They might help us get it, but they may not be able to fully explain it. And until our level of consciousness is on a whole new level, we may not be able to fully get it. So I'm going to start there. But let me read some things that Srila Prabhupada has written or said that relate to what Rameshwar has brought up here. And I hope that they will... I think I found some things that are definitely related to what he says, and hopefully they'll be in some way satisfying to him. So this is from a commentary that Srila Prabhupada wrote. Okay, let me make sure I got the right thing. Oh, no. This is from a letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote. It's a famous letter, actually. And some very interesting things are brought up in it. He writes, "We never had any occasion when we were separated from Krishna, or we've never had any occasion where we're separated from God. For example, when a man is dreaming, he forgets himself. In a dream, he creates himself in different forms. Now I am the king," right, in his dream. This creation of himself is two things. One, as the seer, and two, as the subject or the scene. As soon as the dream is over, the scene disappears and the seer remains. Now he is in his original awake position. Our separation from Krishna is like that. We dream this body and so many relationships and other things. First, the attachment comes to enjoy sense gratification. Even when we are with Krishna, the desire for sense gratification is there. There is a dormant attitude of forgetting Krishna and creating an atmosphere for enjoying independently. So it's saying that we kind of leave one realm and enter another due to our desire. Right? He says, at the edge of the beach, sometimes water covers the sand, and sometimes there's dry sand. Right? The water goes back and forth with the tides. The ocean is coming and going. Our position is like that. Sometimes covered, sometimes free, just like the edge of the tide. As soon as we forget, immediately illusion is there. In other words, sometimes we're not covered by illusion, but then in a moment we could be covered by illusion. Just as when asleep, a dream is there. We cannot say, therefore, that we are not with Krishna. Like, in other words, right now, we can't say that we're not in the spiritual world with God, right?
Right.
He says, as soon as we try to become God, immediately we're covered by Maya, we're covered by illusion. Formerly, we were with Krishna in his Leela, in his play or sport. But this covering of Maya may be of very, 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 very long duration. Therefore, in the interim, many creations are coming and going. He's saying even like creations of the universe are coming and going, right? Due to the long period of time, it's sometimes said that we are ever conditioned. There's a word for that, anadi, right? Like that our covering has no beginning. But Srila Prabhupada is saying, understand this term in context. He's saying because the duration is so incredibly long, we say it has no, our illusion has no beginning. It's almost just like, in other words, Prabhupada saying that term's being used like this, the way that we'll say like, this bus is taking forever, right? It's not taking forever, it's just taking a long time. So we use the term like that. He says, but this long duration of time becomes very insignificant when one actually comes to Krishna consciousness. In a dream, we may think a very long time is passing, but as soon as we awaken, we look at our watch and we see that it's only been a moment. Another example is how Krishna's friends were, and so he goes on, he gives different examples. Okay, now this is from a commentary that he wrote, Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam 2nd canto, 10th chapter, verse number 6. In the commentary, Srila Prabhupada writes, liberation is the permanent situation of the form of the living being after he gives up the changeable, gross, and subtle material bodies. That's the verse. And then Prabhupada writes in the commentary, some of the conditioned souls who follow the transcendental sound in the form of Vedic literatures, in other words, hearing Bhagavatam like we do every day, are thus able to go back to Godhead and attain spiritual and, quote-unquote, original bodies after quitting the conditioned, gross, and subtle bodies. Right? So he's saying we have an original body. We're not, somehow we're disconnected from that right now, but through hearing the right information, he says we're able to attain spiritual and original bodies after quitting the conditioned, gross, and subtle bodies. The material conditional bodies develop out of the living entity's forgetfulness of their relationship with Godhead, and during the course of the cosmic manifestation, the conditioned souls are given a chance to revive their original status of life with the help of the revealed scriptures, so mercifully compiled by the Lord in his different incarnations. Right? Now, here's another one. This was from a lecture Srila Prabhupada gave on July 30th, 1971 in London. He says, you are already in the spiritual sky, Krishna Loka, but you are simply covered. Just like the sun is already there, you are also already there. So
Wow.
actually, right, so this seems to be confirming what Rameshwar was saying.
Yeah.
He says, so actually we are always in the spiritual world, but when you forget Krishna by the cloud of illusion, that is material. Try to understand. He says, try to understand. And then here's something from Bhaktivinoda Thakur from his book Prema Pradipa, page 83. He says, because of contact with matter, the imprisoned soul loses the memory of his original form in Vaikuntha, in the spiritual world. And then he says material rasas, in other words, the taste for
Material relations.
material relationships and the
Yeah.
flavors of relationship, right?
Yeah.
Material rasas are perverted reflections of the soul's original spiritual rasas.
Interesting.
And now I want to end with this. And the reason why I want to end with this is because, like hearing what Rameshwar is saying and reading these things, it almost puts a picture in the mind, almost something like the Matrix, right? Now, you still haven't made it through the Matrix, Raghunath.
No. But
Okay.
Bunky last night said, you really got to watch the Matrix. I was like,
Yeah,
I
you
know.
do.
I know. It's got to be
So-
at a certain point in the day where I won't fall asleep. Like,
We got to do like one of those Clockwork Orange things on you where like we strap you down and then we hold your eyes open so you can make it through.
pour water on my head and feed me at the same time.
Yeah. So in any case, there's a scene in the Matrix where you see that like where the lead guy with Neo, that's his name, I believe, right?
Neo. Yes, I know.
Yeah,
that.
where he kind of wakes up in his original body,
Oh.
and he's in a test tube kind of thing where he's plugged into with all these electrodes that are kind of using his body as a battery. And he can look and just see there are thousands of other human beings that are plugged into this system. So they're all had, up to that point, he was entirely absorbed in the virtual world.
Gotcha.
And then you realize, no, I had a whole body sitting here in a test tube lying asleep. So now our mind goes there. We think, okay, well, do I have a spiritual body lying in a test tube in the spiritual world or something like that? And this is where I'm going to say, when it comes to this kind of thing, our imaginations probably come short. It probably can't reach there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
How come people are stealing our philosophy and making millions of dollars in the movies? What are we doing? What are we doing with our life?
actually, it was Rameshwar that wrote to me and mentioned that he had seen that the makers of the Matrix had done quite a bit of reading in terms of Bhagavad Gita as well as some
really?
Buddhist texts. Yeah.
And Avatar. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Okay, but here's the point I want
Go
to
on.
make.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Go.
So this is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, and we may as well go out and say right now, within Bhakti Yoga communities, people often take very strong stances on issues in relation to this, issues that are like beyond us.
Beyond our even conception.
And one person says, well, this book or this teacher says this, and another one seems to be saying the opposite, and then they debate like crazy and insult each other over which one's right or wrong.
It's so stupid, isn't it? It's like you go on Facebook and you're arguing about spiritual stuff, but you're like being almost like cruel about it. It's like,
Yeah.
I feel like, okay, you great pundits, you great scholars, you failed because you missed the essence of the whole thing. We're going to like fight over some minutia of some old books. Come on.
And Srila Prabhupada, he kind of tells us, don't get lost in this. Because, in my understanding, is because it's like these words won't quite get us there. It's only when we have that spiritual depth does it all completely crystallize. So in relation to subjects like this, Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote this, and he did it in an interesting way because it's in his book Jaiva Dharma, which is a guru explaining to a disciple something. So these are the words that come through the mouth of that guru. He says, I have explained all this to you in words, but you can only understand their true meaning to the extent that you have realized and experienced the unalloyed spiritual realm. I have just given you a glimpse. You should try to realize the meaning of what I have said through Chit Samadhi. Right? Chit Samadhi, spiritual realization. Chit is the nature of the soul. It's the knowing nature of the soul, right? All knowledge. That is our true nature. And Chit Samadhi means when we are fully absorbed in the deep truth that is our nature, which is found in meditation, right? So he says, you should try to realize the meaning of what I've said. He doesn't say you should debate it like crazy with people when you're still on this very surface level of understanding. He's turning to his disciple and say, I want you to go deep into spiritual practice. And as you go deeper, what I'm saying to you now will make much more sense. And the apparent contradictions will no longer appear to you as contradictory. They're only contradictory because the language and the analogies and so on, they can't quite bridge the gap between the material and the spiritual in these cases. So he says, you should try to realize the meaning of what I've said to you through Chit Samadhi, spiritual meditation. You will not be able to understand these topics through mundane logic or debate. The more you can free your faculty of experience from material bondage, the more you will be able to experience the spiritual domain. So it's a subtle question, but certainly Srila Prabhupada is saying many things here to confirm what you've heard. But I think we just have to be a little bit careful that we don't simplify it. And when I say simplified here, I mean like make it give a simplistic explanation of it. It's something that's very subtle. All right. Pretty cool stuff, though, right?
Very cool.
There's actually many more quotes like this that are really interesting. I just pulled up a few. Okay.
8:40. We're doing good.
Okay. Well, you ready for a question, Raghu?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a little break, take a little break, and if you're listening,
You want to take a little break?
I'm just gonna take a little break. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Just a little smoky break, you know. No, just
Okay. All right. Easy, Raghu. Easy. We're almost through the show, okay? Keep it together.
I was going to say, people who are listening for the first time on Facebook, welcome. We do Srimad Bhagavatam classes, the essence of Bhakti Yoga, of
I
the
don't
yoga
even
system.
call them classes, right?
We do, well, yeah, what do we do?
It's
What
like
do
a
you call
show.
it, man?
It's a show.
It's a show.
There you
We
go.
put on a show for you, a little song, a little dance, Kastuba talks. I blurt out things and step on his train of thought. But anyway, we do this every day.
Insights, sir. We love
Welcome.
your insights.
Yeah, and you can get it wherever you get podcasts. Thank you. All right,
Thank you
question
for that
me?
little public service announcement, Raghu.
This is with-
Okay, so this is for you, and this is coming from Rula, from Amman, Jordan.
Okay.
We're reaching all kind of corners of the earth.
I know. Jordan.
From Jordan. Okay. So Rula asks, I was approached by a high school student to speak about how Hindu practices are affecting the environment. For some reason, I think he wants to see how harmful they are to the environment.
Mara, is Jordan an Islamic country? Are they, or is it one of those where you have to be Islamic, or what do they call that? Like Pakistan and Bangladesh, where it's like a law.
It's not a law there
I
that
don't
you
know.
have to.
It's not
do
a
it.
law?
Yeah, I don't think so.
No,
No.
but
It's
but
just that it's
Just
but
predominantly
there's a lot of
Muslim.
oppression for sure.
there's a lot of oppression. Okay.
Yeah.
So is Jordan's not like that? Anyway,
Or
'cause it
you're
almost
asking,
sounds-
is it the state
asking-
religion?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm asking because it's sort of like
It
is
seems
she
framed that way.
inferring, is she inferring that the teacher was trying to lean her against Hinduism as a culture for being polluters? Like,
Right, and so okay,
Right.
whatever
Which
it
could
is,
be, which could be.
whether there was that
Yeah.
angle to it or a religious angle to it or not, we don't
Right.
know.
92% of Jordanians are Sunni Muslims, and they're approximately 6% are Christians.
Okay,
That, according to my Google search.
okay, thank you.
good job, Mara.
Good job, Mara.
Good job, Mara. You're doing great there. Continue cutting those vegetables.
Okay, so he writes. Anyway, I'm not an expert on Hindu rituals. Rula writes. I'm not an expert on Hindu rituals. I know that the Ganges River is not as clean as it used to be and is polluted, but don't want to get into that as I'm not equipped
From
into the details.
thousands of years of Hindu rituals. That's how it's dirty.
I don't think it's the Hindu rituals that are polluting.
It's not the
I think
Hindu
it's
rituals.
the
It's the
factories.
factories.
Yeah.
Poor- and it's there. And it truthfully, India hasn't managed their sanitation, their sewage.
It's my thought about
50% of
India.
the people have it's like raw sewage. There's not appropriate septic, and
Yeah. Any case,
you don't want to go there. You
Well,
wanna
no, I mean,
chase that septic squirrel.
my point was that in my own observation of India over the past 35 years that I've been going there,
Yes.
it's like it's westernization. In other words, the I don't want to use the word improvements, right? But like the material advancement that, like, for instance, we made in the United States, it happened over a more gradual period. Where there, because it's already happened somewhere else, it happens faster, and it happens faster than they can keep up with it.
Yeah, it's almost like you get a city trapped in a village, and you got people from almost like two
Yeah.
different worlds, like someone with a cart and a donkey, or a camel, and someone with driving like an electric car, the Tesla, or a
things like that.
Tata electric.
Yeah.
It's almost like you got two different worlds going on.
Yeah, right. Like you're ready to buy cars before you're ready to build highways and things like that, But
Yeah.
so in any case, Rula goes on. What I'm thinking is to refocus his research on how traditionally Vedic books encourages ahimsa to ourselves and to the environment, versus like in the Gita when it describes where you should practice yoga and more. I'm wondering if you can help me shed some light on this issue from the Bhagavatam. It would be very valuable and helpful. Shed a little light there, Raghu.
Yeah.
Shine a little
Yeah,
light on us today.
Well, I'm sort of a black light bulb. Remember black lights? Focus our day.
Rula. Is that what you're
Rula.
looking for? Yeah.
Okay.
Are you going to be able to answer this question?
No, just tell me the question again.
Well, the question is there anything from Bhagavatam or from, like, say, the Bhakti tradition that would help us understand, apparently, like how it's a tradition that can actually help the environment rather than harm it?
Okay, got it. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing in that in any of the Hindu rituals. They're like lousy for the environment, unless, I mean, some recently probably have been upgraded to like the powders might be manufactured. You start getting into details like that, but I don't know. You know what's problem is? I think a big problem is India still uses a lot of paper bag or plastic bags, although it's been banned, and people just like, I don't know. Maybe this is because for millennia, Indians have. I'm just making an excuse here for Indians, but for millennia, they've been using leaf cups. So when you eat something, you throw it on the ground, and maybe it's lost in translation when you have like a paper plate or a piece of plastic. Like you and I, we were systematically trained not to pollute from
that happened in our youth. Like, in other words, in
our
America,
lifetime.
people
In
used to just throw
1968,
stuff
there was
around
a
much
massive
more.
campaign,
Yeah.
and they had the Indian crying, and they had the guy throwing stuff out the
The
window.
Indian crying,
Remember
that's
that?
right.
Remember the Indians crying?
Yeah.
People start pollution. People can stop it. Kathy Haggerty knows what I'm talking about. Laurie Pag, we're on the same page. But it's one of the things. There was an active campaign, just like in Central America. There's an active campaign for pollution in Costa Rica. It's not like that if you go to a lot of other countries in Central America. So it's almost trained us, like, give a hoot, don't pollute. Right? And that's just like the mantra in my mind.
Yeah, but I think
Instead
even
of the
this
Hare
involves,
Krishna mantra.
like, pollution beyond just like littering. Like
Right.
there's a lot of other kind of more. But the way that I look at this question is, if you look at what Srila Prabhupada was doing, he was taking the teachings of Bhagavatam and the teachings of all the different acharyas who were explaining Bhagavatam, and he brought them to the Western world, which is a Western world that was, particularly when he came, India wasn't like in the same condition. Like Delhi wasn't polluted then like it is
Right.
now, right? Delhi, the air in Delhi is practically the worst in the world. I mean, there's some cities in China that are competing with it, but other than that, it's just like the worst, It wasn't like that when Prabhupada came. but it was like that in Los Angeles, in New York City, when Prabhupada came, right? And maybe not quite as bad, but bad.
Right.
And that was just one form of pollution. So many others that continue to this day, obviously, and that's seen in the the effects of climate change. But what Srila Prabhupada was saying was, he was like, I'm coming to you with a message coming from Bhagavatam that's giving you not just spiritual realization, but a lifestyle that is very suitable for cultivating spiritual realization. It's a lifestyle that's in harmony with nature, and it's in harmony with God, who is the creator of nature. And that involves going back to the earth. That involves living a more simple life. So he was promoting what he called simple living and high thinking, right? In other words,
So that's the best T-shirt right there. Simple living, high thinking.
And so he was saying, all these automobiles, we don't need these to be happy, right? We don't need to be drilling the earth and sucking all the oil out of it to be happy. We don't need to create all this petroleum burning vehicles to be happy. We can live off the land, and this is where the cow and the bull come into it all. That these are animals that we should be cherishing and protecting and loving. And if we do treat them with that love and care, then simply with some land and the assistance of these God-given beautiful creatures, we can live loving the land and loving the animals and have all our needs provided, and at the same time have a lifestyle that's conducive for a peaceful mind, for meditation, and for spiritual life. And that's what Hinduism, that's what texts like Bhagavad Gita and especially Bhagavatam are promoting. It's just that India's not exactly following that right now. Why? Because of all the Western influence.
I mean, sure. And if you've ever ridden on like a horse cart or like a ox cart or something like that, it's sort, and supposed to go. You got to go from point A to point B. That is sort of like a charm. It takes you right out of that mode of passion, that Raja Gun, where you're like, oh, got to get there, gonna be here. You're just clippity clopping, clippity clop. It sets your brain up for a different pace.
Sure.
Think how much the car alone and the subway and the train. Think how much it puts you in the mode of passion. Just like going there, got to get there, gonna be there, and it's just like it's a different mindset than if you were to walk. If you were to take a horse-drawn wagon, right? Yeah. You just move at a slower pace, like a speedboat compared to a sailboat,
Yeah, or it's growing your food instead of buying it wrapped up in plastic in a grocery store.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Planting the seeds, caring for the plants, harvest, watching them grow, harvesting, it has a deep effect on the mind. And that's why like spiritual people, a lot of time they get into gardening, because there's so much that you imbibe, so much that you absorb in the process of planting and growing and harvesting food that it helps set your mind up for deep spiritual thought, which standing in line at a grocery store with a cellophane wrapped what's the word I'm looking for, when the food, with poisoned,
prepackaged,
prepackaged, but also like with all of its
pesticides, herbicides, fungicides,
and all of that kind of thing. Yeah, it's like that's all just killing, preservatives and all of that. It's a different lifestyle. So one could look at India and say, "Oh, look how India's failing at this." India's failing at it because of the Western influence in India, right? But if you go back to the tradition that's found in these quote unquote Hindu texts, the books like Bhagavatam and so on, these spiritual texts, then you'll find a whole different thing. And that's what Srila Prabhupada was trying to revive, right? Still trying to revive.
Right? Also, you can't blame, a government that is mismanaged for the actual culture of the ancient traditions. There's thousands of years of governments switching hands constantly.
Sure.
Mara said, am I supposed to read this publicly? She's like, no, don't do it. Look at that. She's like, no, you're going to read my private message publicly? I'm sorry, Mara. I can't read it.
It's okay.
All right. So next question. We got time for another one?
Yeah. Did we answer her question? Did we answer her question about ahimsa?
I think so. I hope so.
Okay. You did. I'm off my game today.
It's okay, Raghu.
Funky, this is like professional. You're just meandering around, looking out the window. Yeah, I know. This is the real thing here. You can't just meander.
Okay. Margie, next question.
Okay, Kastuba. This one is from Godly Worm Food.
Godly worm food.
Yes.
I like these. What is this?
Godly worm food. In other words, our body becomes worm food.
I
think
get
that's
it, but
right,
why are we
the
talking
end,
in code names?
godly worm food. Because this is from the
It's a
Discord thread.
Yeah.
Oh, the Discord. Oh, that's right. The Discord thread. You have to pick a code name, which is hard enough. I'm still
You
trying
don't
to learn
have
names.
to, but people do.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so Godly Worm Food writes, Haribol, y'all. I am new to Bhakti, and I come from a more New Age spiritualism, shamanism, mediumship background, and look at life as one long reading/channel. So I'm wondering about the phrase, we are creators of our own reality, and how it fits in with the teachings of Bhakti. For example, I've been one to be tugged around from not making up my mind and go with the flow, and always wound up doing what others wanted instead of speaking my truth. I always try my best to set an intention for the highest at all times. Currently, I'm stepping into my power and feeling grounded. I know I could go even deeper into self. I know we are here to serve Krishna, but in what ways are we here on an individual level? Like how to live every moment in pure devotion and also function in this material reflection of existence. Am I overthinking it? I have so many questions and would love to pick someone's brain who's on a similar frequency. Dhanyavad.
Dhanyavad.
What's the question? What's the question?
So the question was, I know that we're here to serve Krishna, but in what ways are we here on an individual level? Okay. And then also, like, how to live every moment in pure devotion and also function in this material reflection of existence. Okay. So let's look at the first part of the question. I know that we're here to serve Krishna, but in what ways are we here on an individual level? So this is the first thing. This is real important. It's not like going to work. Like, like in other words, like most people live a life where like, I go to work and the reason why I go to work is to make money. And that's all just incident. If you could just give me the money, I wouldn't bother to go to work. Right? Because I have a whole nother life. And that's the life that I'm living, which involves, my relationships and my home and my hobbies and ways I entertain myself, or my other types of pursuits. Work is something that I do separately from that, and I do it in order to get the money. So when Godly Warm Food writes, I know that we're here to serve Krishna, but in what ways are we here on an individual level? My answer is be like, our individual level is part of our service to Krishna. In other words, just like these two are, they are brought together as one, as part of our essential nature, right? Like work is something that I do it's not essential to my life. I just need the money from it so that I can get on with my essential life. But our connection or our service to Krishna, it's not something separate, but it's essential. It's what I do. It's like what I thrive on. It's what I'm designed to thrive on. And so therefore, the two aren't separate, right? When we do the deepest individual work, like through yoga, we do it through connecting with God. And at the end of it, we find now I realize not only myself, but I realize God. So Godly Worm Food is writing, I know I could go even deeper into self. As you go deeper into self, you go deeper into your connection with God. Just like if a leaf were trying to understand, who am I? What am I all about? It would have to understand its identity in connection with the rest of the plant or with the root. It doesn't understand it separately. It understands how my essential nature is tied to the root. And so similarly, our essential nature is tied to our connection with God. And so it's not that our individual level is 100% grounded in and rooted in our relationship with God. So they're not separate things. They work together. And then for the second part of the question, like how to live every moment in pure devotion and also function in this material reflection of existence. So we see the material existence all as God's energy. We were reading yesterday with a spiritual scientist, right? How time is commonly spoken of as God, right? It's a manifestation of God's energy, and it's a way that God is speaking to us through time, right? We read, earlier in the week that Lord Kapiladev, who is Vishnu himself, was saying, I'm present in two ways. I'm present internally as the super soul, as the Paramatma, God within the heart, and I'm present externally as the force of time. So it's not that the material reflection is in any way also set for the bhakti yogi. We see the material world not separate from God, but as God's energy, and also that God is speaking through this energy. So whatever we're doing in this world, at no point in time do we feel like this is separate from my connection to God. It all becomes tied in. And when we get this point, when we truly understand it, it transforms everything. In other words, like we might be thinking, you know what? I want to pursue spiritual life, but unfortunately I have this job to do. Or I wish I could go move into an ashram and experience spiritual life, but I have these children to raise. But no, your job and your raising of your children, if it's seen in the right light and if it's seen as connected to God, then you're going to work and you're raising your children all become part of your path of yoga. And the service that you do in those realms can be understood and practiced as service to God. And that's why Bhakti Yoga is like so, its potential is so broad to transform not only the individual, but society. Because it's not that the only people that are going to get it have to wander away from everyone else, right? We can stay in the world and we can stay connected with people and be developing the deepest spiritual realizations, and we can all be doing it together without all having to wander off. So godly worm food, I hope that helps. You're not overthinking it. I think this is exactly what you should be thinking about. And as we go through Bhagavatam together, hopefully together we'll be able to recognize the connection between the material energy and God more deeply, and we'll be able to understand the connection between ourselves and God more deeply. All right.
You are lucid, and that was eloquent.
Oh, thank you.
It was very eloquent. Yeah,
I appreciate that.
thank you.
Okay, and I think that's it.
There. What do we
So
got?
we got
there?
no show tomorrow, but we do have Sweet Baby Krishna tomorrow evening, right?
Baby Krishna tomorrow night, and we'll restart everything Monday morning, 8 a.m. If you want to join us live on Zoom, it's fun. It's more fun. The vote's in. You got the votes back, and Zoom is more fun. Join us on Zoom by getting the secret codes from Mara at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And then you can join us there. You can look at each other's apartments and homes and pick apart what books they read on their shelves, look at their art. Wonderful transcendentalists to stalk. And I want to thank everybody for joining that I didn't say good morning to. I like to say good morning, everybody. Everybody on Zoom gets a good morning. If you haven't gone to Apple Podcasts, go there now. Write a little review of the show and tell us about your journey. And then we all read it. And we all read your story. And everybody's story helps everybody else on their story. One last announcement here. I've been doing the Bhagavad Gita every day.
Oh, yeah.
About 13 minutes a day. It's so much fun. And today
13.
I'm on chapter 11.
Oh.
11 days of
The
cartoons.
special effects chapter.
Yes, special effects. No, it's been really fun. Bhagavad Gita's great.
It is, right?
Yeah, it's great.
It's so